welcome back. This is the second video in our series and corresponds with the second session that's coming up on Appraoch. Now, Appraoch was the first stage of the Appraoch sales process that we learnt in our training. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about Appraoch. Why do we put so much focus on Appraoch? Well, Appraoch is where you establish the beginnings of a relationship, the beginnings of trust. It's also where you gain agreement to move to the next stage of the sales process, which is discovery. Agreement that you can spend time with this person exploring and understanding them and their organisation, their needs and challenges. And we will learn more about discovery through the next reinforcement session, but right now let's just focus on the Appraoch. We need to earn the right, we need to break down the barriers. That's what the Appraoch is all about. So I want to talk a little bit about planning that Appraoch. If you remember in the training we talked about doing a lot of research. Now, how much is a lot of research? Enough. It's really important to actually get in and talk to the person that you're going to speak to. So you don't want to be planning forever. But a little bit of research, some Google searches on the person, on the company, on an understanding of where they're placed with their customers, any challenges they've got in the industry they operate in, and so on. Some familiarity with the person and the company and their challenges before you walk into a meeting, walk into an Appraoch, can help you a lot in establishing rapport, and that's one of the key objectives of an Appraoch. In today's world, there's a lot of activity on the internet that you can find information about people. For example, LinkedIn. Most professionals, most business people worldwide these days are on LinkedIn, and they have shared some information about themselves on LinkedIn. So being armed with that information when you go into an Appraoch can be highly valuable to help you start the discussion, help you build rapport. Obviously, if they're more active on social media, you can look at some of the discussions they've been having on forums and groups and so on, and they can also provide good insight ready for such a meeting. From a company point of view, lots of things about the company can be found on their annual report, on news feeds about the company. If they're a listed company, you can go to the stock exchange and look at all the information available about that company, including latest news and so on. They must report anything that's happening in that company. Good information to know. But even if they're a private company, you can get a lot of information through a whole host of different sources, industry magazines and so on. We'll talk a lot about how to build rapport, because really that's one of the key requirements or key needs in the Appraoch, is establishing rapport for the first time with somebody you've never met before. And we're going to talk in a moment about behavioural styles and how you'll leverage the behavioural style or adapt your behavioural style to the behavioural style of the other person. So first off, you're going to have to very quickly identify what sort of behavioural style that other person primarily displays, and then adapt your behaviour to that. So we'll spend a little bit of time on this video talking about that in a moment. But before we do that, I wanted to talk about the 4 key core principles we learnt during the training. If you remember those, number 1, no distractions. Tune out, focus on the individual you're talking with. Really important. Secondly, show respect. Put them at ease. Make them feel important. Third, encourage them to do what? To talk. You don't talk, they talk. You need to work out how to get them to talk. Make them feel important in the call. Thirdly, actively listen. Fourthly, actively listen. Key thing to do, particularly if it's a face-to-face meeting, is have eye contact. By showing eye contact, you show respect, you show that you're listening, and that person will be feeling more comfortable to talk with you. I'm going to talk about each one of these in more detail. But before I do that, talking about distractions and talking about listening and so on, I wanted to tell you a story and this is about me, when I was a green salesperson. I'd just joined IBM, and IBM had put me through some basic training, and I was really excited. IBM's a great company, and they had some great products. I was in what they called the Office Products division, and I was selling the latest in typewriters, the latest in photocopiers, and so on. Really excited. Went out in the field, and I struggled at the beginning. Part of their development program is the regional manager would come out with us and spend a day or two watching us perform, sitting with us while we go in from call to call. We had a great regional manager, one of nature's gentlemen, a consummate professional salesperson. The customers absolutely loved him, and I learnt so much from this individual. But let me tell you about the first 3 calls I went on. I went in, and up front I said, hey, really pleased to meet you, and I thank you, and sincerely thank you for the time you've given to us today. And I'd like to use that time to tell you about my product. And so I'd go in and talk about the product straight away. After 3 calls and unsuccessful calls, the regional manager took me aside and said, okay, let's talk about how you're doing and how you might be able to improve. And he said, just one quick suggestion. Instead of going in and talking, and I've got to tell you, you're doing all the talking, go in and do the listening. You need to get the customer talking very early in the process. And that means asking a question that's relevant to the customer, a rapport building question. So I learnt a big lesson there. One was to listen, and one was always get a rapport building question that would get the customer talking. And generally that's a question something about them. If you walk into an office, you don't know anything about a person, you look at their desk, you look at their photographs, you look at any certificates sitting around, you'll learn so much about that person that can lead in, I see you're a golfer. How often do you play? Straight away you're onto a topic they love, and you can get them talking about it. Build rapport straight away. Great lesson to me. Have a rapport building question ready, and listen, listen, listen. You can improve your approach by applying the 4 principles. So let's go through those 4 principles in some detail now. No distractions was the first. You've got to tune the world out. If I have regularly gone to a social event or a party, and regularly I've been very impressed with somebody because they've walked up and said, "G'day, how are you?" And they've got me talking about me, and I love talking about me. We all do. Your customer loves talking about you. You really need to tune everything out and focus on that customer. Be customer focused, or the person focused, not you focused. A story about when I was distracted, and you'll think of all sorts of stories when you're distracted. One day I was sitting in my office, the phone rang, I was doing some memos, I was flat out trying to get different things done, and it was one of my better customers. So I said, "G'day Bill, how are you going? How can I help you today?" And in the meantime I'm continuing with one hand typing a memo. Now what was I doing? I'm pretty good at multitasking, I tell you. I can do a number of things at once. But what I learnt very early in the piece is I can't do multiple things well at once. And particularly I can't listen to a person well if I'm distracted. This customer taught me a great lesson, because after he's talking a little while, he stopped and he said, "John, is this a good time?" And I went, "Woo." And I went, "Bill, I'm terribly sorry, I was letting myself be distracted. You now have my full attention." And he laughed, and we went on to the discussion. I turned and I focused on just that person on the telephone. It makes an amazing difference. And they feel it at the other end. So really, really, really important. Focus on the person. Ensure you have no distractions. There's a writer by the name of Daniel Goleman, wrote a book called Social Intelligence. If you ever get a chance, have a read of it. It's starting to age a little bit now, but it's absolutely vital. He says, rapport feels good. We all know that, don't we? Rapport feels good, generating the harmonious glow of being simpatico. That is, a sense of friendliness where each person feels the other's warmth, understanding and genuineness. That's not possible if we're distracted, is it? That rapport will never build if you're trying to multitask or doing other things or concentrate. One of the things I hate is I'm talking to somebody in an event and their eyes are going around sort of looking at other people. They're obviously thinking, what am I missing in this event by concentrating on John? Well, don't bother, mate. If you're not going to concentrate on me, let us both go and talk to somebody else, because there's no value and you're not building any rapport with me whatsoever. Okay? So no distractions. The second principle is respect. Putting people at ease. Making them feel important. Think about yourself. You like to feel important. You like to be made to feel important when you're talking with other people. You, as a salesperson, have the job to make sure you're focused on the other person and making sure they feel comfortable and they feel important. It's not about you, it's about them. They've got to understand that you're not trying to impress them, but you're trying to get them relaxed and concerned and show that you're concerned about them. Okay? It's important not to be too casual in an approach call. That can turn a lot of people off. But also not too stiff, not too formal. It's probably a good way of doing this is to observe the way they're behaving from a level of relaxation or casualness or formality, and mirror that. Be at the same level as them. And that will show them respect and also put you at a similar level to them so that they can feel that you're somebody that they can be comfortable working with or talking with. The third principle is to encourage, to get the customer talking about themselves. Encourage them to talk, encourage them to be open, encourage them to feel comfortable that they can talk and that you're going to listen. People want to be understood. You talking doesn't encourage that, does it? You actually need to get them talking so that they can be understood. And it's really important in the approach that they be understood by you and not the other way around, right? So by listening, you find out what is important to them. So let's talk about active listening. How do you do that? Well, the one I think is absolutely vital is eye contact. Look somebody in the eye when they're talking. Why? Because that shows respect. It shows that I'm listening to you. I'm not being distracted by anything else. All my ears and eyes are focused on understanding what you're saying. And in doing so, the other thing you do is listen to how they feel. Because we all know that what we say as words is only part of the communications. In fact, most research indicates that less than half the communications. The other half comes through body language, facial expressions, whether it's smiles, whether it's scowls, whatever else it is. The communication that we're all showing, and you can see that I'm showing in this discussion right now, it's a lot more in what I'm doing with my body and my face and my hands, isn't it, than just the words I'm talking. So eye contact says, I'm listening. I'm focused on you. I'm not letting anything distract me. Give respect. And you know, the more respect you give to somebody, the more respect you're going to get back. So it's really important. If you want respect, you have to first give respect to get it in return. When a customer senses that you care, they tend to drop their defences and they tend to communicate with you much more openly and honestly. Really powerful. When you build rapport, you've got so much strength in the discussion and trust building that communication just opens and they feel very comfortable doing so. You will have experienced people and senior people in your organisation, others that are really good at this. They walk in, they meet you, and you immediately feel rapport with this person, you can trust this person, you're looking forward to the discussion you're going to have with this person. You have to be like that. So, they're the 4 principles, and then applying those principles with an understanding of the behavioural style on top of that, adapting your style to their behavioural style, putting the 2 together will provide a really powerful engagement and a powerful building of rapport. You need to approach different people in different ways. It's not the same for everybody, and that's what the 4 characteristics of a behavioural style are, and why we study those. Really important you understand those, and it becomes second nature that you identify them and adapt your behaviour based on the other person's behavioural style. We've produced a separate video on how to adapt to different behavioural styles in the approach. Please have a look at that, and I think you'll find a lot of additional information. I'd like to sort of summarise by referring you back to the approach planning model, the 5-step approach planning model that we discussed in the training. This is a model. If you think through this model every time you're going to plan an approach call and overlay the principles and behavioural things we've learnt, you'll find that it will work quite effectively for you. Don't underestimate the importance of the approach in any call. People make quick decisions about us all the time. They might do that intuitively, but based on your tone, your appearance, the energy you've got, they make instant decisions about you. And as I said, not consciously necessarily, but we all immediately have an impression of a person when we first meet them, right? You need to make sure that impression that they get of you is extremely strong, coming across in the way you behave, the appearance and the energy you have, and the focus on that individual. Perceptions, feelings and intuition is the tools by which people will judge you. So you need to be ready to make sure that those perceptions are right, that those feelings are comfortable, that the intuition that they have about you is extremely positive. So in conclusion, suggest you listen to this video a number of times if you get the time between now and when we have our session, session number 2. Practice the 4 principles of approach. Really get to know them and practice them and build them into your call plan. So complete call plans and post-call analysis on all the approach calls you do before our next session. I want you to talk with the rest of your group about at least one of those calls and how the approach went, from call planning through the approach and the analysis thereafter. You know, few things will help you more to increase sales than doing a call plan. Research was done 3 or 4 years ago now. Those salespeople that religiously did call plans before going on a call, particularly an approach call, got on average 25% higher sales. So call plans and doing those are really important. Sometimes I'm asked, when do I really need to use call plans and call analysis forms? Well, I think the answer is only when you want to sell more. So remember these ideas about the power of your first few minutes with a contact. You will soon realise that people open up more easily when you are developing more sincere, meaningful relationships. Focus on your approach. It will give you an enormous return on investment through the sales process. I look forward to seeing you at our next session meeting.